Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Chiara. I want to understand how to. Okay. I don't see it in the screen. Yes. No? Okay. Okay, Chiara showed us a comprehensive picture of the childless universe in Italy, while in the second part of this work we will shift our focus both on childless individuals and on parents who postpone the birth of their first child. The objective is to try to compare life trajectories of these two groups with the idea to try to understand if there exists some life course trajectories that can be considered as specific both for parents or for childless individuals. The challenge at the base of this work is that comparing life trajectories of parents and of childless people is a little bit difficult because life transitions of parents are mainly influenced by the birth of a child. So, as said before by Chiara, we have information of life trajectories with respect to work and union of individuals from their 16 to the age of 40 or 45. And in this work, we decided to, we assume parents postponers to be those who have children after the age of 30, that is almost the mean age at first birth in Italy. In this way, we want to take into account only the trajectories in this life stage, both for parents and for childless people. That is, in this part of their life course, they are both childless, and we know that afterwards, some of them will eventually become parents. So we focus on this part of the life course of individuals and try to understand if there are different trajectories for those who stay childless until the end of their reproductive age or those who become parents afterwards. We use the same method that Chiara presented before, so sequence analysis and the cluster analysis approach. And I think that I don't want to go too much into detail with the description of all the groups, but I think that the most interesting group to be analyzed and described are group number 2 and group number 6. Those groups are mainly composed of women who spend a long period of their first part of their life in engagement. And these groups are composed mainly of women who will become parents after the age of 30. So it seems that being in a stable relationship is like a prerequisite for having a child after the age of 30. And these two groups are the groups of postponers, those who postpone childbearing after the age of 30. And specifically for the second group, we have women who spend a lot of their time working and being engaged, and at the very last stage of this part of their life course, they start forming a family, that is the orange part. While the sixth group is a little bit different because it's composed of women who spend a lot of the first part of their adult life without having children and not working, but being engaged. And then in the last in the last phase of this stage of their life, they start working and they start trying to form a family. So I think this is quite interesting because the most important result is that engagement seems to be very important even for postponers in order to have the birth of the first child. So union is confirmed to be one of the most important determinants in the decision to have the first child. Then we try to put all those information in a regression model in order and considered the class membership as a predictor of the probability not to have a children until the end of the reproductive age. That is, we want to consider that different life trajectories can help us predicting what will happen in the future for those women who have very different life trajectories in the first part of their adult life. And there we can see, so our main variable, our outcome variable is the probability to arrive at the end of the reproductive age without having children. And we can see that belonging to cluster 2 and 6, that are the cluster I presented you before, have a lower probability not to have a child after the age of 30. So these are the group of people, of women who postpone the birth of their first child. And then we can also see that there is this group number 5, that is this group that is the group that has the most traditional life course events until the age of 30, that has a higher likelihood to end up the reproductive age without having children. So, concluding for this first part, we were able to identify different life course trajectories that allow us to predict the probability to have a children after the age of 30. And the most important element that emerged from this analysis is that stable relationships and that long period in engagement can shape the way individuals go toward having children or not in their life. This is for the first part. Then I want to skip to the second part of the analysis, and this time we shift again our focus and go to analyze life course events that are linked to the probability to have the first child, with a specific gender focus. So we want to understand if there are different mechanisms that lead to the birth of the first child for men and for women. And we want to focus on the role that work has in determining the timing and the likelihood of having a children, both for men and women. The starting idea at the base of this study is that the reproductive decisions are very complex and are made in a system of interconnected choices that involve different life domains like union and work-related issues. So decision and attitudes and the decision toward in one of these domains can obviously influence decision made in the other two domains, and they are in their turn likely to be influenced by choices made in all the other life domains. So by focusing on childbearing and on work and union trajectories, we want to try to simultaneously analyze processes that can bring to the decision to have the first child. So when studying reproductive choices, it's fundamental to take into account choices made in other life domains, specifically to the life domain of work and union events. And in order to do that, we use proportional hazard models and multiprocess modeling. that allow us to simultaneously estimate 3 main events in the life of individuals. We take into account childbearing, so the risk of having the first child, and then we take into account employment, considering both episode of entering and exiting a work episode, and we focus also on union formation, taking into account both the risk of entering and exiting an union. We try to simultaneously estimate this equation with the idea that there exist some unobserved factors that can can simultaneously shape both fertility, employment, and union history. And it's very important to take into account these unobserved mechanisms that seems to have an important role in shaping decision about the chance to have the first child. I want to skip to the results without going into the methodological issues. And let's start from the bottom. So our outcome variable is the risk of having the first child. And we take into account time-varying variables related to employment, education, and the relationships. And we divide the relationships between married, cohabiting, and engaged, just to understand if different kind of relationship can differently influence the likelihood, the risk to have the first child. And we estimate the models separately for men and women to try to understand if there are different mechanisms explaining the likelihood of having the first child. Starting from the bottom, that is from union history and union events, we can see that the presence of a relationship increases the risk of having the first child, both for men and women, and the effect is stronger for more formal relationships, which means that married individuals have a higher risk to have the first child with respect to those who cohabit or those who are engaged. Going to education, we can see the first gender differences because education seems not to have an effect in determining the risk of having the first child for men, while it is significant for women, and it's a negative coefficient, which means that women who study tend to postpone the birth of the first child. And then we go to the most interesting result, I think, that show a clear gender difference with respect to the role that work has on the likelihood, on the risk to have the first child. And we can see that for men, working has a positive effect on the risk of having the first child, while if we consider women, they are penalized. If working women are penalized, and there's have a lower risk to have the first child. Then we focused on this is a more complex part to be explained, I think, but I want to focus just to the most important result. On the most important result, because all these coefficients represent the unobserved relationship between the equation that we are considering, which means in practical terms, in empirical terms, this means that there are some unobserved factors that simultaneously influence, for example, choices made about conception and employment entry, or conception and employment exit, and we have all the possible combination between the 5 equations we estimated in the model. But I think that the most interesting result is the first one, is in these 2 lines, because if we look at the unobserved component that can simultaneously influence decision about conception and employment entry and exit, this coefficient is not significant for men, which means that in our model we consider a series of observed variables about working, both for men and women, and this observed factor seems to fully explain the mechanisms between the employment trajectories and decision about the chance to have the first child. While for women, the situation is completely different, because even if we take into account observed factors linked to employment transition for women, there seems to remain a part that is unexplained, and which is related to employment histories for women that influence in this way, in this case, in a positive way, the risk for women to have the first child. We don't know how to label, let's say, this mechanism. We tried to think about a possible solution to these questions. We don't really have an answer, but I think this may be related to the issue of postponement, because those women who postpone parenthood maybe wait for reaching and for meeting the best set of minimum conditions to have a children without stress, let's say. And this, I think, is related to the effort they make in their employment trajectories that result in a lower probability not to have children. And concluding, no, oh, okay. So we saw that there are some unobserved factors that influence the, in a joint way, the decision of both men and women to have the first child. But we can see that we saw in this, with this analysis, the different impact that work has on in male and female life, and we saw that working seems to be detrimental for women who wants to have a child, and there is also some unobservable elements that further allow to try to explain the mechanisms, the very complex mechanisms that link the world of work for women with their decision to have the first child.
Okay, thank you for these two wonderful presentations, this contribution, and questions about these last two contributions together.
Thank you, everyone. I actually have a question for the last speaker, Annalisa Donno, and it's just an explanatory question. So you talked about, when you presented the predictory model, you talked about group number 1 and 6, but then you underlined something about group 5.
Yeah.
And it wasn't clear to me which one was group 5, so can you go back to that?
Yeah.
Because I think you said something quite interesting about that, which I couldn't put together because I didn't have the groups in front of me anymore. Yeah, it's something around there.
Okay, so you are talking about this.
Yeah, you said something like the most traditional trajectory.
Yeah,
of number 5, something,
yeah.
something. Can you please,
Yeah.
can you please go back to that? Thank you.
We saw these trajectories also in the presentation of Chiara, and she told that this is the most traditional, and in fact it is, because if you see, there you have in the first part of this life stage that is between 16 and 30. There you have women that do not work and are single. Then they made the transition to a relationship, that is this group. Then they make the transition to marriage without working. and stop. This is the very traditional path, let's say, the most traditional one.
Okay, and what is the prediction?
The prediction is that this is the group that is more likely not to have children after the age of 30. That is a little bit counterintuitive.
Sorry, can I follow up on that? Sorry, thank you. So just to follow up, so you do not exclude that they have children before the age of 30? No.
Yeah. They are childless, and we know that some of them they are childless until the age of 30, and we know that some of them will become parents afterwards. So they are just postponing childbirth.
Okay.
And the group of postponers is this one.
This one.
Of those who have a large period in engagement and then postpone all the other life transitions.
Okay, so what you're saying is like this group number 5, the most traditional one, if they don't have children by then, they probably end up not having children.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Can be the explanation for that they are not going to have children. So maybe they are the ones who have medical problems?
We controlled in our models also for medical problems that they are not significant. Because it was our first idea, maybe they are disadvantaged because of health problems, but if I remember well, the variable is not significant. So we don't have an explanation.
Yeah, but we don't know anything about fertility impairment, so maybe
No.
can be the fact that in this condition probably those who have no problems would have had the children before.
And sorry, we also have this information on health issues at the period of the interview. We do not have retrospective information on their status, so maybe this is linked also to this result.
Sorry, could you repeat why you used two different set of clusters between the two studies?
Sorry?
Why did you use two different set of clusterings? You had 5 clusters in one study and 6 in the other. Why did you? Can you just repeat why you used different ones?
Yeah.
Yes, because in the first part we only studied childless people, and from 16 years old to 45 for women and 50 for men, so they are permanent childless. While in the second part we studied childless individuals by the age of 30. And then we know if after 30 years old they will have or not a child. So we want to compare childless individual and individuals who postpone.
Yeah, the starting sample is totally different, but the method is the same.
I'm just wondering, in the previous section, Gian Piero, he concluded that so having employment is essential to becoming parents, but it seems you have something opposite, no? So it's true for men, but not true for women. I don't know. I interpret it.
The work of Gian Piero was focused on couples, while we are estimating separately men and women, and I think that this is why we are able to try to disentangle the different mechanisms explaining the role that work has on the decision to have the first child. And I don't know, but I think that Gian Piero considered also other parities. Yeah, and I think this may be also the answer to your question, because we only focus on the first child, while it took into account the total number of child, all the parities, and so maybe the effect is different because. But and then I think that the idea is that women are have more issues when they have to decide to have children if they work. So I think it's not, the fact is that there are different studies. The one of Giampiero focuses on couples. We separate men and women. They are not in couples. So we don't have couples, so I think this is the main difference.
Yeah. And if I can add a thing, maybe there is also a matter of selection, because we selected those who, yes, live in a traditional family, maybe they are more follow more traditional steps, but usually this group maybe have children before. So those who are childless at 30 and have these characteristics maybe are a subgroup of this more wider traditionalist group. Some of them have children before the age of 30, so maybe those who remain are those having some problems, or maybe have just decided not to have children, or we don't know, maybe, but yeah. So.
But I'm just wondering, maybe again the qualitative interview can be helpful, because some previous qualitative research found that there are the group of people who live in partnership and they really want to keep the high quality of the partnership, and that's why they do not want to have children. It just came in my mind. Sorry, I promise.
I don't want to spoil anything, but in our research, with the survey, we saw that there are some people, and this is the case of young people that are scared of eventual problems with the couples once having children. So I think this can be an issue.
Okay, thank you for these three wonderful contributions. Thank you to Ilaria, Chiara, Annalisa, and also Maria Letizia Tanturri that's involved in two of these presentations. Thank you. Thank you.
I think it's lunchtime.
Yes,
yeah.